When Bray's system collapsed live during a high-profile government contract test, CEO Ethan Bray stood frozen. His million-dollar engineers had no answers. Panic spread like wildfire. Investors watched in horror, and media vans pulled up outside. Then, as silence swallowed the chaos, the janitor's daughter, Laya Jennings, stepped forward from the shadows. With grease on her hands and confidence in her eyes, she whispered, "I think I can fix it." What happened next shook the entire industry to its core. Before we start, like this video and comment where you're watching from. Your support helps us bring more powerful stories. Now let's begin. The red warning lights bathed the glass walls of Braytech Digital in an eerie glow as alarms blared through the building. Inside the sleek Silicon Valley headquarters, tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Lines of code raced across monitors faster than anyone could read. Panic surged from one department to the next. The unthinkable had happened. Bray's core security system, trusted by government agencies and Fortune 500 companies, had crashed in real time during a live federal performance audit. CEO Ethan Bray stood like a statue at the center of the operations floor. 49 years old, dressed in a steel gray suit, and known for firing executives mid-meeting, Ethan was not a man who panicked easily. But now his face was pale, his fists clenched. Every monitor in the room flashed one unforgiving word: failure. The company's entire infrastructure was offline encrypted databases, security firewalls, internal messaging systems completely disabled. "Tell me where the breach started," Ethan barked, his voice trembling beneath the surface. "Right now." A chorus of confused voices filled the air. "We cannot trace it, sir. It bypassed all three of our encryption layers. There is no external IP. It looks like it came from within." Those words sent a wave of dread through the room. If the system had been compromised from the inside, not only was Braytech facing the loss of government contracts, but the company could also be accused of internal espionage. Stock prices were already plummeting, and social media was catching fire. "Everyone on the executive team to the war room now," Ethan snapped, storming toward the glass conference room as the top engineers and department heads scrambled after him. No one noticed a side door open near the back of the office. Laya Jennings stepped inside quietly, clutching a worn-out leather backpack. Her long auburn hair was tied into a messy bun. She wore black cargo pants, scuffed boots, and a faded hoodie with the words "Property of Tech Valley, High Robotics Club" on the front. Her hands were stained with grease, and there was a smear of dust across her cheek. She looked completely out of place in the cold glass and steel environment of Braytech. She had only come to visit her father, Robert Jennings, the company's night janitor, who had forgotten his lunch in the storage room. But the moment she stepped into the chaos and saw the terrified faces, the red screens, and the broken code, something clicked in her mind. She had always loved puzzles. Her eyes darted across the room. She did not need access badges or a security key to understand what had happened. She could see it in the logic tree unfolding across the monitors. A recursive virus had been triggered, looping through the system's own backup protocols, feeding on itself like a digital parasite. It was not just malicious, it was brilliant. Someone had designed this with full knowledge of Bray's architecture. But they had made one mistake. They assumed no one outside the company could think faster than the machine. Laya took a step forward. Junior technician looked at her and raised an eyebrow. "Who are you?" he asked. She glanced at his badge. "DevOps good. You have clearance to command line access. I need to isolate the recursive string on node 4B before it doubles again." His mouth fell open. "What? Who even are you?" "My name is Laya," she said calmly. "I am here to fix this." The room fell silent for a moment. No one moved. The entire operation floor stood frozen, as if time itself had paused. Engineers stared at the young woman, who had just walked in unannounced, and spoken with more clarity and confidence than most of them had managed all morning. Laya Jennings did not look like a savior, but there was something in her eyes, calm, focused, strangely unshaken, that unsettled the chaos around her. She was not guessing. She knew what she was doing. The junior tech she had spoken to, Evan, glanced nervously at the terminal, then back at her. You want access to the primary node? That is restricted. If you do not isolate that loop in the next 60 seconds, your entire backup drive will start mimicking the infected string, Laya replied, already moving toward his station. When that happens, not only will you lose your clean version of the operating system, but the malware will begin rewriting your firewall logic. After that, the breach spreads to every partner server connected to Braytech's ecosystem. Evan looked around helplessly. No one stepped in.
Oh.
With lightning speed, Laya dropped her backpack, unzipped it, and pulled out an old laptop, one so scratched and sticker-covered it looked like it belonged in a museum. She connected a custom-built USB device to the side, then plugged it into the terminal. Her fingers began flying across the keyboard like she was conducting an orchestra no one else could hear. Lines of code filled the screen. Some of it was written in Braytech's proprietary language. Laya had reverse-engineered it months ago, just for fun. Robert Jennings, her father, stepped into the room just as gasps began rising from the engineers. Nearby, he had been searching for her near the lobby. Laya, he said, confused, what are you? Not now, Dad, she said without looking up. Your company has a virus nested in its load balancer. I am cleaning it, Robert blinked. The same man who had mopped floors at Braytech for 7 years, whose daughter had never once been taken seriously by anyone in this building, now watched her command the room without hesitation. People gathered around, whispering. The phones that had been used to call emergency cyber teams were now turned toward Laya, recording. Inside the war room, Ethan Bray was pacing furiously. The executives threw out theories, panic solutions, and blame, but nothing was working. Every second counted. Then someone burst through the door. Sir, you need to come see this, the assistant stammered. Ethan marched out, ready to fire someone. On the spot until he saw it. His floor, which had moments ago been drowning in chaos, was now silent. All eyes on one girl with a battered laptop and a custom-built interface that was rewriting Bray's system protocols in real time. What is this? Ethan demanded. Robert stepped forward cautiously. That is my daughter, Laya. She says she is fixing it. Who gave her clearance? Ethan barked. What if she makes it worse? Laya did not even flinch. Her eyes stayed locked on the screen. If I were going to make it worse, it would have already collapsed. I am already inside the recursive loop. Give me 2 more minutes. Who are you? Ethan asked again. She finally looked up. I am someone your system never predicted, and I am not done yet. And with that, she turned back to her screen. As the system logs began flashing green, a row of green status bars lit up across the main interface like a lifeline returning to a dying patient. Firewalls that had flatlined moments earlier were now stabilizing. Data flows previously tangled in corrupted loops began organizing into clean, recoverable structures. A hush fell over the entire Braytech operations floor. What no team of elite engineers had been able to do in 30 minutes, a girl with a patched-up laptop and no security badge was doing in real time with precision, speed, and terrifying clarity. Ethan Bray stood motionless, his sharp eyes fixed on the girl in the hoodie. His instincts told him to intervene, to demand credentials, to regain control. But every second that passed reinforced one impossible truth. She was fixing the company's worst failure faster than his entire cyber division combined. He glanced at his lead architect, who shook his head in disbelief. She should not even be able to interface with the system like this, he muttered. She built something we have never seen. I told you, Robert said quietly beside him. She's been building machines since she was 10. She rewired our apartment's entire electrical system with a screwdriver and a coat hanger. Her school never took her seriously because she did not look the part, so she taught herself. The lead architect took a cautious step forward. Excuse me, Laya, is it? Can I ask what you are using to interface with our mainframe? Laya typed without looking away. Custom code built on a hybrid kernel. Your infrastructure relies on closed-source security layers layered over outdated logic trees. What your system refused to see, open systems that can learn faster. She tapped a final command. The room fell completely silent. Then, one after another, The monitors across the building changed. System integrity 100% restored. All threats neutralized. Recursive loop terminated. A slow, stunned applause broke out. First one engineer, then another, till the entire room erupted in claps, cheers, and disbelief. Some began laughing, others just stared, a few even teared up. The unimaginable had just happened. Bray had been rescued. Not by a billion-dollar security firm, not by a government specialist, but by a janitor's daughter with a backpack full of spare parts and a brain built like a machine. Laya stood up, closed her laptop, and calmly placed it back in her bag. She looked at Ethan Bray, who was still frozen, arms crossed, jaw tight. "Your system is clean," she said. "You should patch the API layer vulnerability near port 3821. That is how the breach got in." Ethan took a step forward, struggling to speak. His voice came out. How? How did you learn to do that? My father cleaned this building for 7 years. I grew up hearing about Braytech. I studied everything I could get my hands on. Your engineers threw away more knowledge in your trash than some people ever learn in college. I read it all. She turned to Robert and gave him a soft smile. "Let us get some lunch, Dad." As she walked away, her boots echoing against the marble floor, Ethan finally found his voice. "Wait," he called out. Laya stopped but did not turn. "What are you?" he asked, almost whispering. "Some kind of genius?" She paused. "I am someone you never saw coming," she said quietly. And then, without another word, she walked out the front door while half the building stood in awe, unsure whether they had just witnessed a miracle, a hack, or the beginning of something even bigger. The sun had barely dipped below the horizon when Bray's boardroom lights flared on again. This time there were no alarms, no chaos, and no shouting. Just tension, deep, pressing tension. The atmosphere was thick with disbelief and bruised egos. Ethan Bray stood at the head of the table, staring at the security footage playing on the glass wall behind him. The video showed a girl in a dusty hoodie walking into his operations floor, typing commands like she owned the system and fixing a breach that had nearly collapsed their empire. "Tell me someone knows who she really is," Ethan said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Did a background check," said Camille, his chief operations officer. "Her name is Laya Jennings, age 19. No college degree, no work history. Attended Tech Valley High but dropped out 2 years ago. She lives in a 1-bedroom apartment with her father, Robert Jennings. A teenager just saved a billion-dollar tech company from public collapse. Yes, we owe her more than a thank you." Camille folded her arms. "Actually, we might owe her everything." "Do you know what would have happened if she had not isolated the recursive loop?" Ethan did not reply. He already knew. He had seen the simulation logs. The loop was designed to feed into Bray's own self-learning architecture, which, once corrupted, would have wiped every backup across their global nodes. Their encryption protocols would have unraveled, customer data would have been compromised, and federal investigators would have descended within hours. The company would have gone from number 1 to forgotten overnight. He took a slow breath. "Bring her in," he said. "Now." But when they reached out, there was no response. No one could contact Laya. Her school had no records of her returning. The number her father provided went straight to voicemail. She had disappeared. It was 2 days later when Laya finally answered the knock on her apartment door. She opened it slowly and found Camille Bray, standing there with a folder in her hands and a look of unease that no executive training had prepared her for. "We would like to speak with you," Camille said gently. "In person, privately." Laya stepped aside and let her in. The apartment was small, but spotless, filled with the quiet hum of custom machines running along the far wall. Laya's workstation 3 monitors, a soaring desk, and circuit boards looked like a NASA control center compressed into a living room. Camille glanced around, clearly overwhelmed. "You built all this?" Laya nodded. "With what I could afford." Camille placed the folder on the table. Inside was a contract, 7 pages long, with a title written in bold at the top. "Braytech Special Projects Division Lead Developer Role. Ethan wants you to join us. Full control." Your own team. Unlimited budget. Your terms. Laya raised an eyebrow. Why? Because you saw something none of us could see. Because you did what hundreds of engineers could not. And because Braytech does not want to risk losing you to someone else. Laya flipped through the pages but said nothing. After a moment, she closed the folder and looked up. My terms? Yes, you name them. She leaned back in her chair, staring Camille in the eyes with a steady calm.
Fine, but I do not want a team that looks good on paper. I want problem solvers.
I want minds that were underestimated. People who never got a shot. Camille hesitated, then nodded. Deal. Laya looked down at the contract once more. She did not smile. She simply picked up a pen and began to sign. Across the city, Braytech's future had just changed again. But this time, not with code. This time, it changed with one stroke of a pen. The elevator doors opened with a soft chime, and Laya stepped into the newly renovated floor of Braytech's innovation wing. It did not look like a tech company anymore. It looked like a dream rebuilt from scratch. Concrete floors gleamed under glass panels etched with live data streams. Interactive holograms floated in the air, projecting layered systems, real-time code, and global firewall analytics. It was unlike anything she had seen before, and she had built most of it. Admin plate was simple. Laya Jennings, Director. Special Projects Division. But what she had created in 3 weeks was far from simple. 16 engineers worked across modular pods, each handpicked by Laya herself. None of them had Ivy League degrees. One had been a mechanic, another a high school teacher, one a dropout who coded video games in his garage. Every single one had been overlooked. Every single one had something to prove. Laya walked through the floor with quiet confidence. The same girl who once watched this company from the hallway while her father polished floors now ran its most vital division. But not everyone was pleased. On the executive level, the board had been whispering. Questions had been raised. Why had Ethan Bray given full creative control to a teenager? Why were millions being poured into untested projects and unknown talent? And why were competitors now circling like vultures, trying to hire her team away? With offers triple the size, Ethan, for once, stayed silent. He had made his decision. It was 2 months after the breach when the second incident occurred. This time, not a system crash, but a deliberate attack. A rival company, using a rogue AI prototype, launched a coordinated digital offensive against Bray's infrastructure. Their goal was clear: force Bray offline, embarrass them publicly, and weaken investor trust. But Laya had been waiting. The moment the breach began, her system detected a pattern no other protocol had ever identified: a synthetic signature hidden within the attack script. She had spent sleepless nights building a defense for this exact threat. With one command, her AI core, named Spectre, launched a counter-sequence. Instead of blocking the attack, Spectre rerouted it, sending it back to the attackers in a mirror formation. Not only did it neutralize the breach, but it exposed the origin server, traced the source, and dumped the evidence directly into federal cybercrime archives. Within minutes, federal agents launched an investigation. Not only safe, it had become untouchable. Ethan Bray stood in the center of the main hall as the news broke live across every business network. Reporters called it the most precise cyber defense execution in modern history. Laya, watching the feed from her terminal, turned to her team. Back to work? We are just getting started. The team smiled, their screens already lighting up with new projects, new designs, and innovations years ahead of what anyone else in Silicon Valley could imagine. Across the globe, companies scrambled to match Bray's pace, to understand their new secret weapon. But it was not a weapon. It was not even a machine. It was a girl who had never been seen, never been heard, never been chosen, until she forced the world to see her. Robert Jennings, watching from the hallway, as his daughter led a room full of geniuses, wiped a tear from his cheek. He had mopped these floors in silence, never once thinking this building would one day carry his daughter's name in whispers of awe. That night, Bray made an announcement. A new division would be launched, an initiative focused on discovering and mentoring young talent from overlooked communities. Laya would lead it personally. No college degree required. No connections needed. Only brilliance. The janitor's daughter had changed everything. Not with money, not with privilege, but with mind, fire, and purpose. And the world had no choice now but to keep up.